Hello everybody, welcome to this meeting of the Charnwood Borough Council Plans Committee on Thursday the 25th of June 2026. Please could I ask everyone present to turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are giving your consent to be filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside of the Council's control. May I remind members of the public to be considerate of the committee and officers throughout the meeting and to remain quiet unless you are a registered speaker as part of the allocated speaking slots. For the benefit of those people watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Corey Loseley, Chair of the Plans Committee. Other members we have on the committee this evening are Councillor Lenny, who's the Vice Chair, Councillor Campsell, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Granger, Councillor Haji Nicolai, Councillor Infield, Councillor Monk, Councillor Northridge, Councillor O'Neill, and Councillor Smidowitz. The planning officers present this evening are Miss Liggins, Miss Wallace, and Mr. Worley. Our lead officer for the night is Mr. Upton. Our Democratic Services officer is Miss Dobson, and we'd also like to welcome Mr. Gill as our legal advisor for the evening. For those watching the live stream, the planning officer presentation has been published on the website and can be found on the agenda page for the Plans Committee for 25th of June. Could I ask that members of the committee use their microphones every time they speak to ensure that viewers of the live stream and recording can hear the discussion? We've had a couple of late requests to speak this evening. One from a member of the public who I'm not too sure is here. Do we have Annabelle McIver in the gallery? No? Okay. In that case, then, we have a late request to speak from Councillor Smidowitz, who will be speaking as a resident on item 5A, P/26/0115/2, 45 Park Road, Loughborough. Is the committee happy to allow her to speak? Could we have a show of hands for all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? And abstentions? Okay, and the second request we've had is from Will Orst, who will be speaking in the applicant slot. On the same item 5A, P/26/0115/2, 45 Park Road. Is the committee happy to allow Mr. Ross to speak in that slot? Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour? Yeah. Any against? And abstentions? Fabulous. So that brings us to item 1, which is apologies. Ms. Dobson, have we received any apologies?
I confirm we've received apologies from Councillor Seaton and Councillor Monk will be substitute.
Okay, thank you very much. And that brings us to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on 14th of May 2026? All those in favour? Any against? And abstentions? Thank you. So that's majority were happy there, so I will sign those minutes at the end of the meeting as a correct record. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms. Dobson, have we received any questions?
Confirm we've not received any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. For information, disclosable pecuniary interests and registrable interests relate to entries that are included or should be included on a councillor's register of interests. Non-registrable interests relate to any other matters. Ms. Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interest?
Confirm I've received a disclosure of interest from the Chair, Councillor Corey Loseley, regarding item 5A, which is P/26/0115/2, 45 Park Road, Loughborough, as he is ward councillor for the area, has called the item in and will be speaking on the item. He will sit in the public gallery and Councillor Lenny will chair this item. I've received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Smidowitz in regard to item 5A as well, Park Road, Loughborough, and she is a resident in the area and does not have an open mind. She will therefore not take part in the discussion and will sit in the public gallery, and obviously she's speaking as well. I have received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Fryer regarding item 5A, again 45 Park Road, Loughborough, as she's received an email from a resident, Ms. McIver, but has declared that she comes to the meeting with an open mind. Can I check whether any other members of the committee have received the email, please? I'll just take your names down. So Councillor Good, Councillor Granger, Councillor Infield, Councillor Northridge, Councillor O'Neill, and Councillor Corey-Loseley. And can I confirm that you all come to the meeting with an open mind? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I do have another one. I've received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Fryer regarding item 5D, which is P23 2324/2 Willow Road, Barrow, who is ward councillor for the area and will be speaking on the item. She will not take part in the discussion and will sit in the public gallery.
Lovely, thank you, Ms Dobson. Are there any further disclosures members wish to make? Councillor Fryer.
Chair, just for clarification and clarity, item 5C, which is also in Barrow, and I am one of the ward councillors, but I come to the meeting with an open mind.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Fryer. That is noted. That brings us on to item 5A, planning applications. On the first item here, 5A, P/26/0115/2 45 Park Road. I have an interest on this item, so I'll now pass you all to Councillor Lenny. Councillor Lenny.
Thank you, Councillor Corey-Loseley. Right, I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Ms Liggins.
Thank you, Chair. This application is referred to Plans Committee at the request of Councillor Corey-Loseley under the Council's call-in procedure for the reasons set out in paragraph 1.1 of your agenda report. These are the impact of the development on the social and physical character of the area and overbearing impact of the buildings. So the application follows the grant of planning permission under P/23/2266/2 for the construction of similar development. This current proposal makes minor elevational changes to Block 1 as set out in the report and increases the length of Block 2 by approximately 6.3 metres in order to accommodate an additional 2 studio rooms. So this is facilitated by an additional portion of land acquired since the grant of the earlier permission, as I'll demonstrate on the upcoming slides. So this is the application site, which is located on the southern side of Park Road with Beacon Road properties and their gardens lying to the west. The flats of Lanesborough Court are to the south, east and south, and the former convent school is opposite the site to the north, and this is a listed building as shown hatched pink on the slide. The area shown in green is the Loughborough Victoria Street Conservation Area, and you can see the site is wholly within it. This is an aerial photograph of the site before any development took place. So here we have photographs of the site. The top left is the side gable of Block 1, with the other top photos being its other elevations, which face into the centre of the site. As you can see, Block 1 is substantially complete, as we saw on the visit today. Work's progressing on completing that. The bottom left photo shows the location of the proposed 1.1 metre tall plant room door in the distance on that rear elevation. The middle photo at the bottom shows the position of the proposed Block 2 and the boundary wall with Beacon Road property gardens. The last photo is of the site looking back towards the site entrance on Park Road. This slide shows the layout of the scheme as approved under P/23/2266. You can see the scheme comprises 2 blocks of accommodation with parking located towards the front of the site and proposed landscaping, and the L-shaped Block 2. So this shows the scheme as proposed now. Again, the proposal is for 2 blocks of accommodation, with Block 2 being more elongated along the northwestern boundary of the site. Bill and cycle stores are located within the development, and a small amount of car parking is proposed again towards the front of the site. This slide shows the comparable site areas between the earlier scheme and that proposed now. You can see that the site now has incorporated a small amount of additional land, which appeared to be former garden land number 22 Beacon Road. And this has facilitated the enlargement of Block 2. This slide shows Block 1 as now proposed. Its dimensions are the same as previously approved, but includes the louvered door to the plant room at the rear, railing detail to the front elevation instead of a solid brick wall, and minor fenestration changes to the front. That's the northwestern elevation, and that's as a result of the omission of an internal corridor. So ground floor studios now have entrance doors directly off the central courtyard rather than that internal courtyard corridor. This shows Block 2 as proposed. You can see the rear elevation facing Beacon Road Gardens is blank, with all windows and doors facing into the internal courtyard between Blocks 1 and 2. There's a roof light in the end elevation roof as shown, and this doesn't overlook any windows or sitting out areas of adjacent dwellings and serves a stairwell. So these are the key issues to be considered in the determination of the application, and each of those is addressed in the officer report, so I don't intend to rehearse those again. The location of the development is close to Loughborough Town Centre, and it's considered sustainably located, and it is a significant material consideration that planning permission has already been granted for a similar scheme. The design and amenity impacts are considered as set out in section 9 of the agenda report. So in summary, it's considered the design which aligns with the design of the approved scheme is acceptable, and that amenity of neighbouring occupiers would be no worse than previously found to be acceptable. Condition 5 of the recommendation includes measures to be taken during construction to ensure nuisance to residents is minimised, like a construction management plan we sometimes ask for. The proposal is also considered to be acceptable in terms of heritage impact terms, and the local highway authority doesn't object to the proposal but requests planning conditions are imposed to secure the parking and access and the turning facility to the front. Flooding, biodiversity and impacted trees are also assessed within the report, and impacts are found to be acceptable. So to conclude, there's a extant permission for the site for 2 blocks of purpose-built student accommodation comprising a total of 16 studio rooms, and this can be completed under the existing planning permission for the site. This item effectively assesses the impact of the additional 2 rooms through the extension of Block 2 and the minor elevational alterations to Block 1. It's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted with the imposition of the planning conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Liggins. We're now turning to the speakers on this item, and the first person to speak will be Mrs. Margaret Smidovics as an objector. For all speakers, there is a 3-minute time for... You've got 3 minutes to speak, and then when 1 minute is remaining, Officer Miss Dobson will let you know.
Thank you, Chair. Is that clear? Evening, members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Please do not view this application as simply the addition of 2 student studios. It is not minor. It is the latest step in the cumulative intensification of a site that was, for over a century, a historic residential garden, forming the setting of a Victorian villa within a conservation area. That garden has now largely gone. Mature root trees have been removed, openness lost, and the character of the site fundamentally changed. What was once a landscape villa setting is now experienced as a dense student accommodation complex. The site is not brownfield, as stated previously by an officer, and not infill. The evidence from historic maps, photographs and planning history consistently shows it was a long-established garden land. National planning policy deliberately protects such land especially within a conservation area where there is a statutory duty to preserve or enhance character. But this duty has not been met. The development is clearly visible, the street scene has been altered, and the villa has lost much of its historic setting. There are also serious amenity impacts on neighbouring residents. Families on Beacon Road now face direct overlooking from upper floor windows, with a clear loss of privacy in their gardens. This is not a minor impact, it is a permanent change to their daily lives. Practical issues remain unresolved. A refuse store placed next to residential boundaries, increasing parking pressure despite being labelled car-free, and significant fire safety concerns linked to a single escape staircase, constrained access and high occupancy. Finally, there is no clear evidence of need. This area is already heavily dominated by both student and private HMOs. There are only 3 roads without parking restrictions, and the community officer has seen the impact. I did not see his report. The proposal adds further pressure without delivering meaningful public benefit. Members, you cannot undo what has been built, but you can prevent further harm. I respectfully ask you to refuse this application, or at the very least defer it for the proper independent review of its heritage, amenity, safety and cumulative impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smithovicz. The next person on the list to be speaking on this item is Will Orst, who is an agent for the developer. Mr. Orst, oh, you're right. You get 3 minutes in which to speak. When you've got 1 minute remaining, Ms. Dobson will let you know.
Good evening, members. My name is Will Orst. I am the planning agent acting on behalf of the applicant. Before addressing the planning issues, I think it's important to put this application into context. It's not an application for a new student accommodation development. Planning permission already exists for purpose-built student accommodation on this site. One of the buildings is already substantially complete, and the second building could lawfully be constructed under the existing permission. The application before you this evening simply seeks approval for a relatively modest amendment to that consent, extending one of the approved buildings to provide 2 additional studio rooms together with a small number of minor external alterations. Since the application was submitted, there have understandably been a significant amount of correspondence and a wide range of concerns raised. However, planning decisions must ultimately be based on the development plan and material planning considerations. Having carefully assessed those matters, your planning officers have concluded that this proposal is acceptable and have recommended approval. Throughout the application, we've worked positively with the officers and consultees to address any issues that have arisen. There are no objections from the local highway authority, environmental health, the conservation officer, the tree officer or ecology, subject to the agreed biodiversity contribution. A number of concerns have been raised regarding overlooking and neighbouring amenity. However, the design has deliberately avoided introducing windows facing neighbouring properties. The elevations towards Beacon Road remain largely blank, with windows looking into the site rather than towards neighbouring gardens. Separation distances remain compliant, and officers have concluded that the proposal would not result in any unacceptable overlooking, loss of privacy or overbearing impact. Parking has also featured heavily within the objections. However, the local highway authority has carefully assessed the proposal and raises no objection, confirming that it would not have a severe impact on the highway network. It is also important to remember that this application relates to just 2 additional studio rooms over and above an already approved scheme, rather than just the new development. Ultimately, members are not being asked to decide whether student accommodation is appropriate on this site. That decision has already been made through the existing planning permission. The question before you this evening is whether adding 2 studio rooms and making a small number of design amendments materially changes the planning balance. Having carefully considered the proposal against adopted planning policy, your planning officers have concluded that it does not. For those reasons and the reasons set out in the officer's report, I respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation and grant approval.
Thank you, Mr. Horst. Our next speaker is Councillor Rhys Corey-Loseley, who called in the application. Mr. Corey-Loseley, are you familiar with the drill? You got 3 minutes, and Rebecca Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chair and members, for allowing me to speak on this item tonight. Those of you who have been on the committee for some time now will be no strangers to me coming before you to speak on PBSA applications in Loughborough Town Centre. There are many of them. I was specifically asked to call this one in by residents in the Park Road, Beacon Road triangle sort of area. First, I would like to say I appreciate there is ACT stamp permission in place, and I would also like to note that there are residents who I've spoken with who are positive about discussions they'd had with the applicant. I'd like to thank them for their engagement. That said, there are still some concerns we have and that we feel should be addressed in public. Parking is always a bit of a contentious issue with this type of application at the best of times, and as you've already heard. But this area is a particular trouble spot. It's the first area you go out from town that doesn't have a residence parking scheme. There is one on Beacon Road and Park Road, but Herrick, Mayfield, Middleton, Oliver Road and Charnwood Road have no parking restrictions. This means that during the day, you'll often find cars parked in the pavement, two abreast on either side of the narrow Victorian streets, mounting pavements, obscuring visibility space, sometimes even blocking driveways. Members know that student applications are often presented car-free and only have a handful of spaces for staff coming and going. The logic of this is that if there are no spaces, then no one owns a car, right? But I'm afraid the reality is often quite different from that. The extra 2 cars we're likely to see from this application won't help with a pretty bad problem that we already have. Members and officers will both also know that policy T3 of the new local plan says that development should provide car parking in accordance with the scale of the development. We have 18 residents plus staff here and 3 parking spaces. Another concern is the impact on the local amenity that may result if we decide to intensify the scheme before it's even finished being built. The most recent version of the plans show that Block 2 immediately overshadows the rear of a number of properties on Beacon Road, who will now have a large building dominating them where they were number 4. Further to that, the bin store is located directly against the boundary with the existing houses. Would you like a commercial bin store at the bottom of your garden? It's actually 10 years today since I graduated university, and while I have a lot of the memories have started to fade, the one thing that will stay with me forever is the potent odour of a shared student bin store in the summer. On page 295 of the local plan, in Appendix 4, the design guidance, it reminds us that bin storage should avoid being a detracting feature of the character of the area. In my view, swapping the bin store with the smaller of the 2 cycle stores would go some way towards mitigating it as a detracting feature. And perhaps it's something that members would like to ask officers about when we come to the discussion in just a few moments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Corey-Loseley. Ms Liggins, would you like to come back on any of those points?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just going back to a comment that Councillor Smidovic mentioned, and just to show you again the elevation of Block 2 facing Beacon Road properties. As you can see, the image number 6 at the bottom there is blank. There are no overlooking windows proposed in that block. The windows in Block 1, which are in the front elevation there, have already been approved under the earlier scheme. So there's no additional first floor windows overlooking any of the Beacon Road properties as a result of this development. The mentioned about, Councillor Corey-Loseley mentioned about parking scheme. I'm pretty sure that some of the streets mentioned that didn't have a scheme actually do have a parking scheme. Mayfield Drive, for example, has a parking permit scheme, and maybe a couple of the others mentioned. So there is controls on the street to manage parking demand in the area, and that's administered through the County Council permit scheme. Parking controls also mean that the Highway Authority is satisfied that this development wouldn't result in any overspill or any inconsiderate parking on restricted areas. There are, enforcement powers available to deal with that if it does occur. So the Highway Authority have not raised any objections to the proposal and are satisfied that although the parking standards are not met as per the policy in the local plan, The policy also makes it important to consider the location of the site. And in this case, as we've said, it's very close to the town centre and with easy walking and cycling distance of the town centre. So in those circumstances, the Highway Authority might consider a lesser parking requirement. And that's been the case here. They don't substantiate or recommend a refusal reason on the basis of parking provision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Liggins. It's now time for the committee to consider the application, and if you'd like to comment on it, can you please raise your hand to indicate? Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much to the speakers. As I was the only one that put my hand up, I'll start the discussion. As far as I understand, and having read the papers, this is for 2 more studios on an existing application that has already been approved, has been through this committee and has numerous conditions and everything. I can see that the addition of the 2 studio rooms will not materially affect the application that's already been approved. Therefore, I propose we accept officer's recommendation with all the conditions as laid out in the planning application. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment or speak on this application? Councillor Campsall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just worried about parking. I mean, these students have got to walk miles to get to the university. So, I mean, sounds a bit daft to me. Even the officer said it's easy distance to come into town, but they're not coming into town. They're going to work up at the university, quite a long way away.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak or make a comment or second the proposal? Councillor Monk.
Thank you. Just echoing what Councillor Fryer said, obviously this has already passed. People knows my opinions on HMOs. The parking scheme, it's not great. If anyone knows the area, it's shocking anyway as it is. It's only going to make things worse, 18 studios. I just feel it's a bit, I think the developer's been a bit greedy by adding 2 more on, and that's why it's come back to committee. You know, they've already got planning permission. Adding 2 more and buying somebody's garden is a bit... Anyway, I can't see any material reasons why we should refuse it, so I'm going to second Councillor Fryer's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. Does anyone else want to make any comment or ask any questions? So I'll put it to the vote. There's been... Oh, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, as Councillor Corey Losley pointed out, about the bins. Is there any way of relocating where the bins are placed? That's Taunton.
Thank you, Chair. The bin stores are shown on the layout plan, if I can get to it. Oh, there, just gone past it. So to the northern end of Block 2, there's a bin store. I think that's the one that's causing the objection mostly, but the plans and elevations of the bin store are available on the website, which I'm sure you all had access to. The height of the boundary wall there in the ground levels means that the top of the bin store would sit below the height of the boundary wall. So those residents won't see it. And it's tucked well to the rear of the site, so there'll be no adverse visual impact of the bins from the street. So my understanding is that they'll be emptied regularly, like any bin collection service, and that there's no scope at this stage to think about where else they might be. This is the scheme before us tonight for consideration.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. On that issue of the bin store, can Councillor Corey Losley did actually suggest swapping the bin store with the cycle store and making that a condition. Is that an option here? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think as Ms Liggins was saying, we've got the scheme in front of us this evening. There'd be no material difference as far as I'm aware from seeing the site and the layout to swapping things around, but it is the scheme in front of us this evening. So in terms of the impacts, they are as laid out in the report, and I think that's a reasonable proposition to take forward this evening. I don't see any strong reason to depart from that, but it is within members' gift. But yeah, I mean, looked at the scheme today out on site. I think, you know, as per the recommendation, it's an appropriate scheme to bring forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Sorry about the delay, but we've just been discussing it amongst ourselves. In terms of a condition in respect of moving the cycle store, you've got to ensure that the condition meets the tests that are laid out. And the first test is whether it's necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, and without it, planning permission should be refused. And with the greatest respect, members, I don't think it's necessary. You've already got an extent scheme that's there, it's being built. You have the scheme in front of you. It's policy compliant, and my advice is that you should perhaps consider going to the vote, Chair. You've got to move, you've got a seconder, and it's for members to decide.
So we have it then. Proposed by Councillor Fryer, seconded by Councillor Monk, to go with officer's recommendation and accept the application. Approve the application. All those in favour? All those against?
So that was 9-4-2 against, so that motion is passed, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Corey Losley, would you like to come back to the meeting? And Councillor Smidovic? I don't want to be... Sorry. Ooh.
Yeah. So thank you for that, members. That brings us to item 5B, which is P/20160146/2, 110 Ashby Road, Shepshed. I would like to refer this to our lead officer, Mr. Wallace. Is it going to be? Apologies, it's going to be Mr. Worley. Just give him a moment to get settled. Whenever you're ready then, Mr. Worley.
Thank you, Chair. Evening all. So this application, again, subject of our site visit today, was on a corner site where Ashby Road West meets Ives Head Road in Shepshed. It's currently a car sales building, a yard and building, fairly full today of cars for sale, enclosed by quite industrial style palisade fencing with quite aggressive spikes on top, I noticed as well. The proposal is to replace that, sorry, this diagram's a bit faint, is to replace that with a car wash business. And that would work on a circulatory basis shown here. So in at the existing access along the Ashby Road frontage, and then into a structure which I've got a diagram of on the next screen, where the cleaning will be done, and a second one, I guess, if it's busy, and out the way you came, basically. The building we saw would be retained. That would be like the store, but also has a role in noise control, which I'll come to in a moment. These are the diagrams, kind of canopy buildings rather than buildings actually just provide cover for the workforce while they attend to people's vehicles. They're about 4 meters high, and in those two locations you can see there, one quite forward and the other just by the building there. There is included, and I'll just use that plan again to illustrate it, some perspex screens. So it is proposed that a perspex screen runs just inside the fence line on the actual corner, and that's what that red line indicates. But also you should just be able to pick up in there that there's an L-shaped line. That's another perspex screen which serves to sort of channel the traffic into its cleaning shelter, but also has noise retaining properties, and I'll mention more about that in a moment as well. So the key issues here are the principle of the development. We're in Shepshed here. It's a business site being proposed to be retained for a similar but different kind of business. The visual impact we consider to be acceptable, bearing in mind what it is at the moment. Residential amenity, including noise, has been perhaps the forefront of comments received. So this application was accompanied by a noise report, a noise investigation that our environmental health people verified. And in that, there were various measures proposed that demonstrated that even at the quietest times of the week, the reference is made to like Sundays, the noise emanating from the use would not exceed the noise naturally in the area, mainly because of the main road right next door. But it says that partly because some of the ways it proposes to manage the site. One is that screen I mentioned that separates the car washing area from its wider surroundings, and the other is that in the noisy activities basically would take place within the building that we saw today. So the high power pumps would be in the building, whilst the they're connected to where they wash the cars by the hose only. So the pumping, vibration and motor noise would be contained within the building. And on that basis, the environmental health team advises they didn't need any further mitigation so long as those disciplines were adhered to. So that was the key to giving the green light to noise. On highways and parking, as you saw, it's an active site now with a access point. They intend to retain that, and the level of traffic is not expected to be hugely different. So it's almost as you were. There's no BNG issue here because there's none there to lose, so none to compensate for.
There have been questions about flooding and drainage, or drainage more specifically, because this site in the past, and I think consistently in the past from what we're told, has shed its water onto the road where it ponds, and I think at worst it can freeze in the westbound channel due to the camber of the road. And it flows off the site because it's been hard surfaced and it's slightly sloped towards the highway. But this application proposes to sort all of that out by introducing a surface water network which will intercept the water and direct it down a new drain to release it. And in that drain, at 7 Trents its distance, would also be the engineering to clean that water, because it's likely to be full of oil and soap and things as well as just water. So for the first time, there'd be a positive intervention into the water just following gravity, basically. So hopefully that will actually benefit that particular corner of the borough. So our recommendation, our conclusion on all of this is that it's acceptable, certainly in principle, and ticks off the individual considerations one by one in a positive way, and therefore the recommendation is for approval with conditions. And in those conditions is one saying you must abide by the content of the noise impact assessment that I've described to safeguard that. Oh yeah, just remember, I should have started with this really. This is before you because Councillor Popley called it in way back actually. But when he saw the committee report, he used the formal words to say that he's satisfied because he's satisfied with the safeguards that are built into the application and that we've recommended in conditions. And he actually withdrew his call in at that point, but that was only on about Tuesday. So the die was cast to be here tonight, so we have to see that through.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Worley. So we have one speaker on this item. It's Mr. Orst again, if you want to come and take a seat. Same drill as before. Time for 3 minutes. You'll get a warning when 1 minute remains, whenever you're ready.
Again, I'm the planning agent acting on behalf of the applicant. The application seeks permission for a hand car wash on an existing commercial site, which has operated for many years as a vehicle-related business. At the outset, it's important to note that the principle of a hand car wash at this location is not new. Planning permission was granted in 2014 for a hand car wash and valeting operation on the site, and therefore the principle of this type of use at this location has previously been accepted. Since submitting the application, we've worked closely with officers and consultees to address all concerns that have been raised during the determination process. Perhaps the main concern has been the potential impact on neighbouring residents. In response, a detailed noise impact assessment has been undertaken by specialist consultants and reviewed by the Council's environmental health team. The assessment concludes that the predicted noise levels from the proposed operation do not exceed existing background noise levels and would not result in an adverse impact on neighbouring amenity. Environmental Health have raised no objection to the application and are satisfied that any future variation in operation can be controlled through planning condition. As mentioned, the application has been amended during the determination process. The site layout has been revised to increase the amount of space available for vehicles to queue within the site, reducing any potential interaction with the public highway. The splash screens and acoustic barriers have also been updated in accordance with the recommendations of the noise impact assessment. Concerns have been raised regarding traffic and highway safety. However, the Highway Authority has reviewed the proposal in detail and has raised no objection. The Highway Authority has confirmed that the development would not result in a severe impact on the highway network, would not create unacceptable highway safety concerns, and would not result in on-street parking problems. Drainage has also been carefully considered. The site benefits from a proposed drainage strategy, including appropriate treatment measures and a silt trap. Officers are recommending conditions to ensure that these details are agreed and implemented before the development becomes operational. This proposal represents the continued use of an established commercial site, will provide local employment opportunities and will deliver a useful service for local residents. To the best of our knowledge, there's currently no comparable hand car wash facility operating within Shepshed itself, meaning that local residents are typically required to travel elsewhere for this service. The proposal would therefore contribute positively to the range of services available within the town whilst retaining employment activity on the established commercial site. Importantly, the application has been assessed by the council's professional officers and statutory consultees, including Environmental Health and the Highway Authority, neither of whom object to the proposal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rost. Before we begin discussion on the committee, is there anything you'd like to come back on there, Mr. Worley? Anything you'd like to clarify or respond to? No? Okay. Wonderful. So that brings us to the committee discussion. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. I've got Councillor Monk and then Councillor Infield. Councillor Lenny.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I've got no issues with this application whatsoever, so I propose we go with officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Monk. Councillor Infield.
May I just say I second that motion?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fryer.
Well, I was just going to say that this is a very straightforward proposal and we should just move to a vote. We've got a proposer and seconder. We don't have to waste any more time on it.
Thank you, Councillor Infield. Councillor Lenny.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there is still the one item that I'm concerned that the condition doesn't quite measure up to what I would have expected, which is the drainage from the site, because this used to be a car wash before, and all of the runoff from the site used to pool on what is now a pedestrian crossing at a major crossroads on the A512. There's no, I don't think there's any, Mr. Hawley may put me right here, I don't think there's any actual design for the drainage, and there's certainly nothing in the condition 6 that says that the car wash shouldn't start operating until the drainage systems are secured.
Thank you, Councillor Lely. Mr. Worley, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Yeah, the discussion of drainage is has been in words rather than pictures, so I don't think I can show you. But what I tried to describe in introduction was the intention. So it would basically be a grid or something approaching the appearance of a spider's web that all channels everything towards a central collection point. The condition that Councillor Lenny spoke of is one that requires the full details of that beyond just the words, and for nothing to operate from the site till it's been both agreed and installed. So everything's up and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smidovic, and then we've got Councillor Northridge.
I'm happy with the proposal, but I do wish this Sunday hours could remain the same of 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, particularly on a Sunday. Even the food shops don't open till 10.
Okay.
Gives the residents a break.
Thank you, Councillor Smidovic. Mr. Worley?
Yeah, the hours of operation conditions on planning applications is to do with environmental factors, and in this case that means noise rather than moral or, dare I even speculate, religious reasons that come from other legislation. So this was about the environmental health. 5 o'clock on a Sunday is what the applicants sought in the first place, and the environmental health saw no problem with 5 o'clock on a Sunday, hence no pressure to change that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Worley. Councillor Northridge.
Thank you, Chair. I was very well aware of the problems or the issues raised, but I'm really happy that they have been addressed. I take Councillor Lenny's point about the drainage. My point was I was going to say that that's been mitigated, so that's brilliant. And, you know, if Mr. Worley's confirmed that the drainage will be addressed, then, which was the major concern when it was a car wash before, now if that's put right, and all the other things, it can only be a good thing. I think it's using the site properly, so I do fully support it. I just hope I don't get crucified when I go back home, but I think, you know, there's no reason to object to this with all the conditions being met to approve it. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Northridge. Does anybody have anything to add? Any other questions? No? Okay, with that, we'll go to the vote. We have a motion on the table to accept officers' recommendations. It was proposed by Councillor Monk, seconded by Councillor Fryer. All those in favour? Lovely. That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. That brings us on to our next planning application, which is item 5C, P/23/0226/2, Coates Road in Barrow. And once again, I'd like to refer to Mr. Worley as the planning officer for this item. Mr. Worley.
Okay. Thanks, Ian, Chair. Right, this one's a bit more demanding of our grey matter. Certainly has been of mine, such as I have. So I'll start with the easy bits. So this application is not actually anything you've never dealt with before, really quite regularly, because it's an outline application for 130 houses on an allocated site. It's good so far, isn't it? And with full details of access provided. So configured in a way we often see, basically. And the details around that is that area of land, just for guidance, we were at probably very close to the southern boundary of that site this afternoon, looking straight down towards the railway. So all of that land, with the access being formed by a T-junction, where the house we visited stands number 93 itself, so a formal T-junction, like others further along the road. Right, that's the easy bit. What makes this more complicated is firstly its position in policy. So it's part of policy HA9 in the local plan, not all of. So that's the first complication. And it's therefore running, loosely speaking, alongside other applications for other parts of HA49. And there's further parts that don't have an application. So we've got this strange, incomplete and uneven picture emerging. But what HA49 requires of whatever application comes forward is not just that it's in the allocation, it's for housing. It requires that it produces a master plan, and that master plan must have particular qualities to it, must address particular aspects to it. And one of those aspects is the comprehensive development of the whole allocation, even though we're only dealing with part of it. Another is how it treats those ecological features on the site, particularly those marked up on this blue plan on the right, about a local wildlife site which is made of wetland and sort of runs alongside the railway embankment. I think it's probably caused by the railway embankment, and water's gathered there and it's created this rich habitat over time. So it specifically says you need to make provision to not undermine that site, and that also that the BNG should ideally be dealt with on the allocation. And that raises the awkward prospect that when you're only dealing with part of the allocation, can it deflect to other parts that aren't involved in the debate? So it's a back and forth. So that's why these applications are 23 applications, and we're only dealing with them now. So this application has come in with a master plan, and it does cover all of the allocation, and it's largely satisfactory in most respects. The only thing that I would say is lacking from our perspective now are the comments made in extras, just received the other day, where our biodiversity officer has identified a shortfall in the detail provided around biodiversity on the site, particularly the hedgerows, and how it's got to protect these wetlands. And I'll come back to that, because not in extras, because it's newer than that today. We have a response to that from the applicant. Right, that's all normal, isn't it? But here we go. What's abnormal here is that land at the bottom end, which we have come to term parcel E, also has a master plan, and it's not the same as this one. And there were efforts to make these guys work together and rely on one version, but that never happened. And indeed, parcel E in December went their own way and simply lodged an appeal for non-determination, so stopped any discussion with their neighbours and any with us, and did their bidding in the courtroom, so to speak. And that was a long, tough 3 weeks, during which a large part of our case was talking about the inadequacies of their master plan. Not some, well, to an extent in relation to their own parcel, but also the way that it treated parcels A, B, C and D. We thought it didn't do these things about protecting the wildlife zone very well, or creating comprehensive development, or the other was a coherent plan for education in the village, future education in the village. But we lost that appeal, and that master plan therefore was approved by the inspector and took effect, and to the extent that it can, and that's not a great extent because it can't be binding upon any parcel except its own. That is the current master plan. So the complicating factor here is we have a different master plan now. They're not worlds apart. I don't mean to exaggerate. If you would put them on the table next to each other, you would have to take a minute to see the differences. But they're not the same in detail. And the irony is that the way in which they differ is that Parcel D's master plan actually aimed to right the wrongs of Parcel E's, or the wrongs as we were alleging anyway, of Parcel E's, because they didn't want to end up in an appeal and fight the fight again. So part of the report you have tonight is about us discussing the wisdom and practicality of having two competing or parallel or comparative master plans side by side, and what happens, which prevails. So we've dedicated about 30 pages to that, I think. The answer is, to a certain extent, given to us by the inspector for Parcel E, because this came up on a couple of days of the inquiry, saying, well, what's the meaning of your master plan Parcel E for the other parcels? And the case was made, well, these are quite high-level documents, actually, and they evolve over time because individual property owners learn more about their sites, and the world moves on and markets change and all the rest of it. So they're never going to be cast in tablets of stone, and there's always going to be scope to deviate and evolve and develop. So with that sort of lesson learned from the inspector, and the master plan we're talking about this evening not being so worldly different to it, it does feel a bit like that kind of development and evolution and departure, for good reasons, and in this case for positive reasons, because it's superior, in our opinion, to the one that's already been approved. It corrects some of its alleged wrongs. So we would be shooting ourselves dreadfully in the foot if we were to turn this master plan down just because it's different. So we don't propose to do that. We propose, as you'll have seen in the recommendation, to approve it and let them live side by side, basically. Just as an anecdote, to that, Parcel B, in the last couple of months, have put their wagon behind Parcel D instead of Parcel E. And they submitted a revision to their master plan that's pretty much accord with Parcel D's now. So hopefully this confusion won't get a third and fourth and fifth layer, but certainly we're up to 2. So that's a complicating factor, and I will confess quite openly that a lot of what we're saying in the report is the lessons learned from the inspector about how the still but lesser shortcomings of Parcel D's master plan can be addressed through the clever use of conditions. And what I mean by that is the wording of some of the conditions are very carefully chosen to make sure they do the job in hand. But what they did do is moved away from the principle and made all of this detail about protecting the wildlife site, for example, a matter for reserve matters. But the conditions say they have to do that. They don't say, give us a scheme. They say, there's a scheme and it must do these things, because it's very clear in its objectives. So that's the wider context. And yeah, it's been a head scratcher because of all that going on. So back to the application and some sort of real life about it. That is the master plan that we're looking at tonight. As I said, if you were to get the other one out for Parcel E, it's similar actually. But you can see what this does is join the parcels up together with the main road running through them all, basically, so it becomes a single neighbourhood and hopefully a single a place of a single entity, so a sense of place of its own, and so on. It does quite a lot, as you can see on its left-hand side, about protecting, i.e. not building upon all of that sensitive area, the green area and the blue areas. So leave it well alone, and the debate then becomes about how the water feeds into those areas rather than disturbing it where it lies. There's other chapters to the master plan. It's about 40 pages, so it's very much edited highlights tonight. There's content in it about sort of design guidelines around building heights around the central spine road, and then dissipating as you go towards the periphery and things like that, and quite a lot about the positioning of open spaces so that they're equally spread through the development, so none is too far from any of the houses, and so on and so on. So all together, quite a good package, we thought. The niggle being what is in extras. Our biodiversity officer think it doesn't quite make the grade on protecting the open space, the wildlife spaces. So not because it's building on them, but because it doesn't really give a full answer to the safeguarding of how the water flow reaches them. But today, the applicant's response to that was, well, twofold really. Firstly, they thought they agree that some of the areas of disagreement about the content of the area, the biological content of the green area there, is down to minute differences of opinion. It's like whether short lengths of hedges should be ranked good or medium and things like that. So we're not poles apart on that. And they also said, well, haven't you read the appeal inspector's decision then? Because what she said is that this site is only one source of water that serves these wildlife sites, about 1% actually. And if it was to be harmed, the wildlife site would survive because it still receives its other 99%. And they say, so that should apply here too, shouldn't it? So, and frankly, I'm quite persuaded by that argument, having been asserted it by the inspector. So in extras, we suggested that we could proceed tonight, but with the caveat that the biodiversity work is upgraded to suit the actual study becomes a further version to meet the expectations of the biodiversity officer. I would like to develop those words a little bit just here tonight, if I may. So to say, I don't think any longer they need a whole new report again. I think we just need those extra bits of information to satisfy the biodiversity officer. So for the purposes of like the resolution in hopefully a short while, we would suggest that it's certainly a revised study, but or sufficient information to the satisfaction of our biodiversity advisor. So yeah, the vehicle it arrives in is less important than the substance, isn't it? So it's just making it easier all round. And on that basis, we're happy to go forward. So just a bit more about the application itself. Normal stuff, you'll be pleased to know now. So the point of access I mentioned, here it is in detail. The T is the bottom left. If you can pick it up with those diagrams, is the detail of the T junction onto Coates Road. But also, they propose improvements to the junction. Oh, that's lucky. The junction we used on our way back, actually, where you come out from the north side of Barrow and join the A60 near Coates. So the background to this is that traffic engineers generally, but also the parish council, shone a light on junctions that are troublesome in and around Barrow. So the traffic work on this, under the guidance of the Highways Authority, has looked at each of those pinch points in turn and basically said, and it hasn't just worried about this 130 houses, it was worried about that whole allocation, so 250, and plus the allocation next door, which is the next on the agenda, which is another 220. And what will the impact of all that be? So a bit of joined up thinking. And they went through the junctions one by one. I think there was 4 or 5 of them. And they said, save for minor tweaks, they can all still cope, actually. The minor tweak being the timing of the traffic lights on the one-way bridge from the A6, again, that we used, except this one. On this one, this junction, they recognised that queuing would be made worse on a junction that's already pretty full. Queues considerably here at the moment, and those queues would tip the balance. That extra would tip the balance. So they're proposing this solution, which is simply traffic lights at the junction, which allow right turners to turn right, both coming out of Barrow Road and coming west from Loughborough, so they don't form a queue behind them while they're waiting, basically. Breaks in the traffic. And that, through the modelling work they do, has been proved to be a solution, gets rid of the queues. So that's built into this application and later becomes the subject of a condition from the Highways Authority, which is in your pack, that says that has to happen before these houses are lived in. So the issues here, I'll not go through it all again, is, well, the easy bit is the principle of development on HA 49, because the basic principle of houses in this place is promoted by us, but then all the complications follow around master planning. But as I've tried to explain, we think we've navigated our way through that, including the thorny issue of 2 plans addressing the same piece of land. And well, in a nutshell, we're happy they can coexist. Access highways things, what I've just shown on the slides. And then, as I've mentioned probably 100 times, the influence of the experience of the appeal decision has weighed heavily on our conscience, basically. In fact, I will be honest and say we have framed the conditions for this that are recommended to you tonight very heavily on those provided by the inspector. So they do the same, essentially the same things in the same way, because she's kind of legitimised that approach. Developer contributions. This is another point that arises out of the appeal. So it's kind of quite a normal array of infrastructure. Parish Council's Village Hall in Barrow that's come on stream now, and particularly the new funded towards the new school. But what came out of the appeal decision is a view that we don't need to worry about what the end picture of all of these housing allocations in Barrow and anything else that happens looks like, because when we get to the point of full, the educational authority will throw its hands up in horror and say don't allow any more, basically. The inspector told us that that is the discipline we should follow, rather than trying to get the answers to the future. And we don't even know what the question is in some respects. So step-by-step approach rather than looking forward and trying to predict the complete picture. So with all of that buzzing around and occupying 150 pages of text, we're able to conclude favourably on this application. Recommendation as you see, with lots of conditions and a section 106, a list of obligations as long as your arm, and those caveats that flow in the report, but also in extras that I've referred to tonight, just to allow certain things to fall into place, with fingers crossed that they do. That won't delay matters because the 106 needs sorting to take months, not weeks. And obviously, if they don't fall into place, we're back here another evening that's not as warm, I hope. So that's where we've concluded, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Well, I'll try to answer any questions.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Worley. That's great. So we have two speakers on this item. We've got, firstly, Miss Rebecca Palmer, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. When you're ready, Ms. Palmer. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute is remaining, Ms. Dobson will let you know in your own time.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Rebecca Palmer, and I'm Senior Strategic Planning Manager at Ashbury Strategic Land and the applicant for this proposal. I am very pleased to speak in support of this outline application for the erection of up to 130 dwellings and associated infrastructure for an allocated site in the recently adopted local plan, and I endorse the officer's recommendation to approve the application. I also confirm that the officer's updated recommendations are acceptable to Ashbury. The principle of residential development on the site is supported in light of the allocated nature of the site within the adopted local plan, and the proposal meeting all criteria within the allocation policy itself. The proposal is supported by a full suite of technical reports, as well as a development brief that has been subject to significant discussion and amendment in line with discussions with officers to ensure comprehensive development and appropriate mitigation of impacts can be achieved. The proposal will deliver up to 130 dwellings, including 30% affordable homes, on a site allocated by this council for residential development. The proposal will, therefore, ensure much needed housing is delivered in a sustainable location and support the council's housing land supply. The proposal will deliver a high-quality development and will include significant levels of public open space. The development brief provides further specifications to ensure stringent design parameters will be complied with as part of subsequent reserve matters applications. As such, we agree with officers that the development brief will ensure that a comprehensive and cohesive development of allocation HA49 will be achieved in line with the objectives of the policy. Importantly, the officer's report recognises the superiority of the prepared development brief and master plan for this application to that considered and accepted by the inspector at the recently allowed William Davis appeal to the south. There are no objections to the proposal in respect of the lead local flood authority, tree officer, conservation officer, environmental health officer, affordable housing, local highways authority and Network Rail. In addition to the delivery of housing in a high quality environment, the proposals will also deliver a number of important benefits, including the provision of a biodiversity net gain in line with policy requirements at the time of submission, which will be secured by condition, alongside significant contributions towards education, including a new primary school, healthcare, community facility and outdoor facilities, sports facilities, which will be secured via Section 106 and total around £2.9 million. Accordingly, I respectfully request members support the officer's recommendation and approve the application subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Palmer. Next, we have Mr. Rod Bilson on behalf of Barrow upon Soar Parish Council. If you could use the microphone to speak, Mr. Bilson, and when you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes, and Ms. Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. The Parish Council recognises that this site performs part of the allocation of HA49 and accepts the principle of development as being established. However, that does not remove the requirement for this application to demonstrate that the development can be delivered in a comprehensive, sustainable and policy compliant manner. The application fails to provide a coherent strategy for the wider allocation. Members are being asked to approve a scheme supported by a development brief and master plan that extends beyond the applicant's control. A neighbouring parcel of land has already been granted permission on appeal basis on a different approach. This raises a fundamental question: how can the wider allocation be delivered as a single integrated community if the key elements are being planned separately and inconsistently? The parish council is particularly concerned that opportunities to secure essential community infrastructure are being overlooked. Land adjoining to the cemetery has been identified as a potential location for future community building, and that could serve both the existing residents and a significant number of new residents from the proposed HA49. Yet no satisfactory vehicle access has been secured or safeguarded. Once opportunities like this are lost, they are lost forever. Ecological concerns also remain unresolved. The council's own ecology officer has maintained objections throughout the application process and continues to identify serious concerns regarding the local wildlife site, stating that the development brief fails to prioritise any protection for wildlife. Given the environmental importance of the area, members should be applying a precautionary approach. In addition, concerns remain regarding the quality of the proposal. The council urban design officer continues to maintain an objection and states that it remains unclear how a distinctive place reflecting the character of Barrow upon Soar will be created. The officers noted that the development brief offers little indication of anything other than standard house types that will be delivered, and raises ongoing concerns about placemaking, connectivity and the quality of public spaces. Chair, this is not an objection to the development in principle. It is an objection to a scheme that has not yet demonstrated that it can deliver the coordinated planning, environmental protection and community infrastructure and design quality required by the local plan. For these reasons, the Parish Council respectfully asks members to refuse the application and defer it until these significantly outstanding concerns have been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bilson. Mr. Worley, do you have anything you'd like to respond to any of those?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The point in the order they were made, the point about the coherent strategy, that what we're looking at on the screen now is the intended coherent strategy. I don't know what else a developer can do to influence what goes on future parcels of the site they don't control beyond a plan like this. So, you know, we've had that in mind when we've been assessing this. There have been efforts to ask everyone to work together and have one version of the truth, but that just hasn't happened. We've got a non-player in here, let alone a party that was acting separately. So there could be no beginning to end joining up. So the developers that are active, I think it's fair to say, have done their darn best to create a scheme that joins things up and makes things comprehensive and coherent. It doesn't bind parcels A, B and C when they come along, although, as I mentioned earlier, it would appear that B have fallen in line, so there's hopefully no arm twisting to be done. But it will be a material consideration for us when those arrive, that this plan exists. And the starting point really to say, look, this is what you should be doing. That affects your land, but it doesn't tell them that they must. So we have to be honest about that. This is not writing law that they have to follow. It's setting the tone that we'll ask them to follow, basically. But you know, how much further we go, we don't have powers to extend the influence over other people's land. Ashbury, the applicants, haven't got the powers to dictate to their neighbours. So this is as close as it gets. And sorry, this appeal again, that's exactly what was alleged by us, actually, about the appeal proposal, and what I've just said was pretty much the answer that came back. So it seems to be the rules of engagement these days. On ecology, as I say, yeah, there are shortcomings in the opinion of our biodiversity officer but the response we've received is accurate in that the gaps between us are minimal. As I say, we are talking about two lengths of two amongst many hedges being rated differently between the different ecologists, one saying they're good, one saying they're moderate. And it's not all of the hedges that disagree about it, it's two small lengths within hundreds of metres of hedges on this wider site. And the point about protecting the wildlife site, again, is not the fundamentals of you're going to trash it by building all over it. It's that detail isn't available isn't fully developed about exactly how water flow will be managed so that it flows continuously at kind of present day rates and feeds these water features. So, but exactly the same allegation that was made about Parcel E by us, by our own biodiversity officer in the appeal. And the answer came back from that is, as I mentioned in the presentation, one, this is only 1% of its feed anyway, and two, reserve matters is where you get the detail of drainage stuff. We're talking about here how many pipes and how wide they are. So perhaps a fair comment that, you know, that's not the stuff of master plans, that is detailed stuff, isn't it? And what gradient are they, and things like that, to maintain that flow. And the condition the inspector used that we've pinched was to say that detail must be amongst your details at reserve matters. So it's not forgotten and it's not lost, excuse the pun, in the flow. Quite the opposite. There's a highlight attached to it whenever someone picks this up and tackles reserve matters. On infrastructure, this appears to me to do the full suite. You know, it becomes bordering on routine, doesn't it? Say we're taking millions of pounds for education, waste, village hall in this case, and so on and so on. But they are, in this case, particularly education. In this case, it's a huge bill, as are all the sites in Barrow, because it's a new school coming out of the ground. Parish Council's request has been accepted and relates to the ambitions for Village Hall, which is just next to this site, just up by that orange arrow, actually. A bit more about that on the next application, I expect. And we weren't quite aware of ideas of further accesses to the cemetery and things like that. No policy requirement for it, and therefore it's not featuring in diagrams like that. So yeah, I get the point about opportunity missed, but it's also opportunity not really presented, frankly. And finally, the quality of the proposal, as advised by our urban designer, and his points, well, if you read his comments in full, the first thing he says about the most recent version is they put a lot right that was lacking before, and then there's a list of residual matters that could be better. We don't regard any of those matters to be vital. And again, because of the appeal to an extent, they can be fixed at reserve matters. You know, reserve matters will go into standard house types and choice of materials and chimneys, you know, all the proper detailed urban design stuff that make or break a place. So we think we've got a lead to follow, and we think that can be effective as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Worley. That brings us to the committee discussion. So I had Councillor Smidovic and then I've got Councillor Infield. Councillor Smidovic.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, Mr. Worley, scratching your head. I certainly scratched more than my head last night reading this. And between page 73 and 86, the number of times the word seems to come up: inconsistent, missing, unrecorded, incorrect, misclassified, absence. So I've arrived today with the Plans Committee document that possibly addressed some of these. But what I'm seeking now is that your report is picking up on those things and they will have to be addressed. Is that right? So,
Yes, precisely. So what extras conveyed to you yesterday was we're asking for them to have another stab, basically, at the biodiversity work and plug those gaps or improve their explanations. But from the feedback we received today, I don't think we need to go as far as a full report because we're down to some discrete points. So long as the information arrives with us and our biodiversity officer is happy with it, frankly, it doesn't matter how it arrives, does it? So long as he's happy with it. So I suggest that if and when you get to making a resolution, I would suggest that form of words is used. So there's more than one way of skinning a cat, isn't there? And just while I've strayed into extras, Jeff reminded me there was a couple of others I didn't mention. I hope they speak for themselves. But firstly, the travel plan was dropped into extras yesterday. I will confess that was just missed first time around from the long list. Developers are happy with it. And secondly, the affordable housing refinement was dropped into extras. And what that's about is not being so prescriptive about exactly what affordable housing should look like now, because they ain't going to be built for 5 years, and it could be a different world by then and different needs. So we talk about this many 2 beds and 3 beds now, but who knows what it'll be in 2031, for example. So leaving it open to come forward, to be explained at the time it comes forward, rather than getting ahead of ourselves.
on page 84, it talks about the trees, retained trees, landscape trees. I don't know whether there are going to be any with TPOs, but I did tell the officer today that I have a real concern because we're having applications coming through with TPO orders on them. And everybody's agreed it's a TPO. But what my residents have told me recently is that TPO'd trees are being felled and the developer is just paying the fine. I find that totally unacceptable. So I just want to raise that so that people know and hear about it. I've seen odd nods around the table, so it's probably happened in other wards as well. Thank you.
Mr. Worley?
So the solicitor would like to come in as well in a moment. So, quite a lot to say, sorry, you'll be sick of my voice. Yeah, I'm not aware of people just paying the fine. In fact, I can't think, or I'm not aware of us prosecuting anyone in the time I've been with Charnwood, which is 3 years. So we've not got as far as fines being levied and bills being paid. This site has got a lot about TPOs on it. So members that were on the site visit will have been probably struck straight away by the great big line of poplars in front of it. It's like a curtain almost. They're staying and are protected. There's a darker story to be said about TPO trees as well, because one of the bits that's a bit harder to take from the appeal decision was the inspector allowed a group of 41 TPO trees to be removed to facilitate the access to that parcel with no immediate replacement. By immediate, I mean geographically immediate. The replacement's going to be in Rothley. She deemed that to be okay because it was a pragmatic solution. But normally you expect it to be very nearby, but what, 4 miles? I don't know exactly. In Rothley, south end of Rothley. No, north end of Rothley, sorry. But that was the adjudication, so that's what we live with. And as said all the way through, this master plan addresses that parcel of land, but can never change that because that permission's in the bag. So I think those trees are doomed, I'm afraid. But for what's left, again, reading this in two levels, for the site itself, we can do absolute tree protection, and one of the conditions is about that. And for the land that's not part of the application but is within the master plan, it has this, which shows what should be kept, which includes those super prominent trees that we saw today.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Mr. Gill, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, just very briefly, Chair. I'm not aware of TPOs being, trees being cut down where there are TPOs. And if members get information that that is happening, then they should report it into the authority. It would be a very foolish developer who's going to try and chop down a tree with a TPO without first making a case to the council. And the reason for that is, in the Magistrates' Court, the fine is up to 20,000. In the Crown Court, the fine is unlimited. When the court take into account the circumstances of the felling, they will look at any benefit that the developer has got. So if the developer has chopped a tree down so he can build a house on there, then he's going to be severely punished. And the highest fine for felling a tree that was covered by a TPO was actually in Leicestershire, £268,751. So there is a financial penalty to people should they not comply with legislation. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm only aware in the past 20 years of two cases that I've dealt with in 20 years where trees with the TPOs have been cut down. But if members think it's happening, then you must report it to the planning team.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. So next on the list, we've got Councillor Infield, and then we'll come to you, Councillor Lenny. Councillor Infield.
Thank you, Chair. So this is obviously, as we've heard in very useful detail from the planning officer, it's a complex proposal. I listened carefully to the speaker from Barrow, and I think, to be honest, they were being unrealistic. We've heard that we as local authority can't impose the same master plan on all the owners of the different strips. We have a slightly better, as I understand it, master plan than the one that was approved at Peel for William Davis, so that's plus. I then listened to some of the other comments that, that we weren't creating the sort of the sense of space that relates to Barrow, but we have to remind ourselves that this is an outline proposal. I wouldn't expect to understand exactly what all the houses will look like and how they'll be finished and how they would reflect what's done in parts of Barrow until they come to be determined. But that's obviously reserved matters. So perhaps it just wasn't understood that this was an outline proposal. The one thing that then did puzzle me was that the speaker mentioned that their future plans or ideas for plans for the cemetery, and that if an access road wasn't included, this would be an opportunity lost forever. Now, I have to say I didn't understand that, and I'd welcome comments from the officer as to whether that's actually the case. Surely if we have this plot, which is the cemetery, and there needs to be an access made, there's presumably, and perhaps it just needs to be footpath access, that could be facilitated. But I just didn't quite understand where that comment was coming from. But perhaps Officer Worley understands the situation better than I do, and I welcome an understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Infield. Mr. Worley.
I'm not sure that I do, to be honest, Councillor Enfield, because it's the first time I'd heard it too. What I picked up there, I hope I heard it correctly, was another access into the cemetery land because some kind of community building is envisaged there in the future. I think, was that about right? Yeah, ooh, I was listening. I agree with you, Councillor Enfield. This doesn't cater for that. It's not known, but it doesn't rule it out either. In fact, it brings a road within close proximity of the cemetery land, which is the third highest interruption into the site from the right on that plan. So those two roads that are nearby could easily form a T-junction into a gateway or something like that if some project came to fruition.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Councillor, do you have anything to respond to on that? No, happy. Okay. In that case, then Councillor Lenny, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's vague to the point of not being able to make a decision on proper information as far as I'm concerned. But going on to the extras report, I'd like to query about the affordable housing paragraph, which says that 30% of the homes should be affordable. These are the Section 106 things that can be agreed at this stage, I believe. And the mixed split to be 67% rental and 33% shared ownership, unless otherwise agreed. Well, this is our council's planning policy to have 30% of homes to be affordable. So why are we putting the idea out there to a developer that they can just play about with it as they please?
Mr. Worley.
If I can pounce on the words play about it as they please, as they wish, first, pleased to say, no, it's as agreed. That means agreed by us. They don't have a free hand to do what they like. And if they come forward in the future with something dreadful, they get the answer no, quite frankly. It's the words to use to implement the concepts I spoke of earlier, which is things change over time. And whilst 67 and 33% is our need now, it might not be in 5 years. Well, you could even imagine the overall development of all of this going on 10 years into the future. We might have built a load of affordable housing, so don't need a particular type. We might need a different type, might be new products. And like we're seeing at the moment, and I know some of you, Councillor Neil, particularly been the heart of a couple, we're having issues at the moment where providers won't deliver. So we're having to change what we do to attract providers to get any affordable housing at all at the moment. So it's for all of these uncertainties being come up with a plan B, or indeed C, D and E, as we have in Rearsby, to make sure we get our fair share of all affordable housing, but it doesn't always look exactly as the impression we had at day one. So it's just to cover those eventualities and offer that flexibility.
Yeah, we're making the decision on today's policy though, because that's what we have to do. Everything should be at today's. Everything should be decided on today's status and policies. So that's why I've not seen this before, as far as I know, in other large applications, unless otherwise agreed, as though opening it all. But we'll pass that now. But because these are agreements that are going to be made by the Head of Planning and Growth and Legal and Electoral Services here. And going on to the recommendation B on the extras, the biodiversity net gain review, well, yeah, and addressing issues of hedge quality and the presence of fungi and barn owl impact. I'd like that to be the presence of all protected species on the site, if that's okay to be amended.
If I can just make a comment on the affordable housing issue, the fact that it's in section 106 today as the policy doesn't mean to say that in 5 or 6 years' time it's going to stay the same, because there is the ability to do a deed of variation. So you can change the tenure mix, you can change the locations, and all that condition is doing is giving that flexibility. If it's not in there and then you're doing a deed of variation, it becomes more complicated because you don't have the agreement in principle. That is something that you can do in the future.
That short part of the sentence isn't in the next application on section 106 for housing mix.
The officers obviously have chosen on this one to put it in. The fact of the matter is, I've said, you can have a deed of variation if all parties agree to a change. And I think the point that Mr. Worley is making is that today that tenure mix is suitable. But what happens in 5 years down the line, when the market circumstances have changed, the government may have introduced new definitions of affordable housing, and you need to have that ability to flex and change things, because otherwise you may be in a position where that is in the agreement, you don't change it, and as a result your affordable housing becomes undeliverable. And that's the point the officers are trying to make sure does not happen. They need the flexibility so that they can change the schemes to reflect the current circumstances at the time that the houses are delivered. It's not at the time that the Section 106 agreement is delivered,
That's not my point.
but the issue is further down the line.
That's not the point.
My point is that the sentence that is written in this section of recommendation of the affordable housing isn't the same as the one on the next item. And I've never seen it written like this before.
Yeah, maybe that might be a question for Mr. Worley as to
Yeah.
why we've felt it's necessary to include it on this application, but not a very similar one which we're about to discuss. I presume there is a reason for that, if you'd like to explain.
Well, seamlessly moving into the next item. Yeah, there's a policy point in here as well that Councillor Lenny correctly raised, which is, today's policies is what we go by. What today's policy says is that affordable housing should be delivered on the most up-to-date evidence of need. And our most up-to-date evidence of need is what we call HENA, the acronym HENA 2022. There may be, Barrow's going to probably refresh its neighbourhood plan soon. And if they do that, they'll probably do a new housing study. And the new housing study will give us fresh evidence of need, which may be completely different to what we've understood to now. So it's for eventualities like that. So we would actually be staying within policy, but allowing ourselves the scope to change to keep pace with it. Yeah. On the second point about this and the next application is our 5 years down the line scenario. It is when they've fixed everything and they know what they want, and they're going to run with it. So it doesn't need any caveats to say what's next, because this is it. This is the final stage.
So in essence, that not this application, but the following one, we're confident that will proceed.
Yeah, well, things can change, can't they? But for the next one, it's meant to be the final act tonight.
Okay, got you. So I've got a few councillors on the.
How about the protected species bit?
Okay, is that in the?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to rehearse the wording here, and I hope you got that point, just talking about how this upgraded information arrives with us. The reason that the biodiversity officer's comment talks about fungi, owls and hedges is because he's happy with everything else, and everything else includes the other protected species, otters, bats, newts and things, birds, things like that. So these are the missing pieces that he just needs to tidy up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Worley. So next I've got Councillor Campsall, and then we'll come to O'Neill and Haji Nicola after that. Councillor Campsall.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just ask the retained trees and hedgerows, who's going to maintain them? And whoever gets the job, will they maintain them for the benefit of the wildlife? Right, not cutting the berries off in October and leaving them, sort of thing. Secondly, you mentioned you're going to plant ornamental shrubs. Worst thing out, if you could plant native, sort of fruit trees would be fine because they're not too large growing, sort of thing, good for wildlife. And could we have swift boxes in the house, Gables? And you mentioned barn owls. I know there's barn owls around there. Could we have some barn owl boxes put on the trees? Is that possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worley.
Yeah, on the maintenance, on a site like this, it's got so many different forms of open space. There will be different maintenance regimes for different parts of it. So what the conditions require is that a maintenance plan comes forward, and it's essentially a reserve matters thing because we don't know, the exact size, shape, position, content of open spaces till they're developed. If it looked like that, for example, you'd be having something different for the play areas, which are mown every week and all the rest of it, to the bit about down the railway, which you basically leave alone for sort of most of the year. So all that would be would be explained in the submission of that plan, including the different approaches. For Barn Owl, the ecological survey that we've had, the one we've been talking about that Biodiversity Officer wants a bit more from, contains a series of measures itself. And I do believe in there is the provision of boxes. It's become almost a standard menu about what's provided for various species, and bat boxes is amongst them.
Okay, all right. Happy with that? And Swift boxes?
I can't say that I've read that in the document, but I'm sure we can find a home for it.
Okay, okay. All right. I've got Councillor O'Neill next. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on the points made by the legal representative, Mr. Worley looked in my direction at that point. For the committee's information, there were some houses, rather nice houses, built in Rearsby, but the developer couldn't actually sell them. He wanted to give them to the housing associations, but the housing association, they said thanks, but no thanks, because the government are making it far more attractive to housing associations to go in a different direction. So the developer was left with quite a few very nice houses, and it required deed of variation, is that the right text? Right term, which eventually was secured, but it was quite fraught at one point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Next, I've got Councillor Haji Nicolai.
Thank you. I have to confess, I have not come across such a volume of confusing information for quite a long time. Now, I really find it difficult, actually, if somebody asks me to vote here, to vote for or against. So I would like actually to ask for a favor, Mr. Worley. Can you give us actually the three major concerns about this application in 3 bullet points, the 3 major ones? We may be actually 25. Can we have the 3 major concerns, your concerns about this application, the 3 major ones, 3 bullet points? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haji Nicolai. Mr. Worley, is that something you're able to do?
Okay. Yeah, if I'm only allowed 3 answers, I'll just stick to the top 3. And my top 3, all that I've written there, I've written a lot, isn't it? My top 3 concerns about what about this puzzle about having 2 master plans for the same land? But said, I think we can live with that. What about not entirely agreeing with the inspector, having fought over the matter for 3 months of my life? You take your medicine, learn your lessons, and don't make the same mistakes again. And what about education, which is the bit I think I found hardest to take, is also that a higher authority has told us the way it should be done. And we're somewhat straitjacketed by that.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Worley. Happy with that, Councillor Haji Nicolai? Do you want to come back? No? Okay. Is there any other councillors wishing to speak at this stage? Councillor Smidowitz again.
So would it be inappropriate to defer this application until you get the answers to all the points that you were dissatisfied with in this report? Or is it something that you're happy that they will be addressing your concerns?
We see that, and what we're recommending is basically 2 pathways to the same destination. I mean, basically, what we built, particularly in extras, is that the final act of granting permission doesn't happen until everything's in place, which would be the same as deferring and waiting for everything to be in place. So you get there either way. So this way we avoid threat of another non-determination appeal. I don't want another one of them, thanks. We can crack on with the 106, the big 106, so no time is lost. These 2 things can run side by side, and hopefully it all comes together at the end at about the same time. Consent that's delivered, housing supply gets a boost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Worley. Councillor O'Neill.
I'd like to propose that we move to the vote. I propose that we accept this. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Councillor O'Neill. There are some, you seconding that? Councillor Fry seconded that. Just so you're both clear, does that include the additional recommendations in the extras report? Yeah. And Mr. Worley's adaptation to biodiversity as well. Happy with that? Okay, wonderful. Well, does anyone have anything to add before we move to the vote? Very well. All those in favour? All those against? And abstentions? Wonderful. That's passed with one abstention. Thank you very much, everyone. Before we move on to the next item, I'm going to suggest a 5-minute comfort break. We'll come back in 5 minutes and just crack through that last one. Thank you. Thank you, members, for being so quick then. I think that was probably worth doing, wasn't it? So this brings us to our final application for tonight, which is, if you bear with me one moment, item 5C, which is P/23/02226/2. Hang on, I've done that one. It's not. It's item 5D, which is P/23/2324/2 Willow Road in Barrow. I would like to refer to the planning officer, Mr. Worley.
Again, sorry. Well, what a contrast, because this is an allocation. It's doing what it should and coming to fruition, basically. So the only thing that's odd about this is that it's, as the title says there, a hybrid application. So it's for all intents a full application, like you deal with every meeting. But tucked in its top left-hand corner, and I'll show this in some diagrams in a moment, is the land for the school. That's part and parcel of this application. And there's no details of that included. It's just reserve the site. Access to it, right enough, but nothing else. So we don't know about school buildings and playgrounds and playing fields and things. Other than that, it's a fully worked on application. Every detail of houses, house types, landscaping, footpaths, the list goes on, which I'll very briefly skate you through. So this is the context. This time it's the HA48 allocation, which is next to, strangely, the HA49 allocation we've just been discussing. And its policy specifically says about 220 houses, please, and land for the school. And we're presenting an application for 220 houses and land for a school. So we're in the right place. And these are the houses laid out it's Bloor homes on this occasion in their style. The features to notice on here is the central lozenge running through it of open space. And within that, if you were to dive into the details, you see that's where the community facilities are, like a play area. This one, for this amount of houses, has a place for older children as well. And they've actually come up with quite an innovative approach. That's something quite different, quite interesting, which are open spaces people are discussing at the moment. There's the blank space in the top left is the space for the school. The access is through the formulation of a roundabout. We've already approved that once because this, as an outline application with access, this was before you in October, and we approved it then, and that included that roundabout. So that's a revisiting exercise on our part. And what this application also has is, again, those on site will understand this better, is where the roundabout is proposed to be constructed. It's currently a complex of farm buildings, and they need to be relocated because of this. So that that collection of buildings in the top centre of this layout is where the farm complex would find itself in the future. And we managed to understand that geographically when we were there. So after it's the very low point of the valley, I'm pleased to say. And I've got graphics on here to give you a pretty good impression of what they're going to look like. I rather hope you'll be pleasantly surprised. It goes as far as affordable housing in this site. They're all identified with all the mix shown of the various types in the various quantities. And in extras, you'll see that the affordable housing operator is happy with that mix. It was a new mix. It had 3 components to it instead of 2. These are the house types, just a selection from the pack, selection from about 12 that I just cherry picked to show the variety. The ones with render bottom right there are the ones that occupy sort of prominent corners and things like that. So they're making a bit more of a statement about themselves than the ones that you find up cul-de-sacs and things like that. good sprinkling of bungalows on this site, which we don't always see. I think sort of 20 and odd. Sometimes we're down into very few numbers, aren't we? But about that many on this site. And this is that farm complex. So it's in two parts. So the left hand of that collection would be the living space, but it forms a courtyard, a private courtyard. And the right hand is their working space, and it also forms a courtyard, which would be the dirty area for the tractors and things like that. And architecturally, it's really quite pleasing, because when I inherited this application a short while ago, I thought, oh heck, the last thing we need is a great big tin shed on the top of a hill. But it's absolutely not a great big tin shed, and it's not on the top of a hill. So that was quite a relief. It's actually quite interesting using this domestic scale for the agricultural buildings, even though they're agricultural buildings, and quite a lot of design quality in there in terms of the materials used and the roof, the form of the buildings replicating the main house. And the main house is in some interest itself. The materials here are an imitation of the local brick and stone, by the way, with timber accents on some of the gables and traditional looking barn doors and things like that. So yeah, it was all quite pleasant to unveil for me. That's just a detail of the roundabout access on Coates Road, a roundabout. I don't know if there's much more to say about it. And exactly the same issue at the A60 comes up on this application. Because if you remember on the other application, I said what they did is worked out what the effect of all these sites combined would be and what's needed because of that. And this was one of those sites. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so it's arrived with us through this application as well. The same scheme, just found in two different places. This is the affordable housing question. I just thought, sorry, it's a bit fuzzy. I thought I would just bring this out because you will have spotted it in extras. So in extras, the affordable housing officer said two things. She said, I'm happy with the mix, which is what those different colour dots signify, by the way. But there is one corner of the site where we exceed our rule of 10 because there's 12 or 13 grouped together. So I just thought I'd shine a light on this. And I would like to make the point alongside it that is, whilst you count them together, you do get to that number, more than 10. But when you think of it geographically, it's a slightly different picture because the 4 of them face the road that on that extract is running north-south, whilst the remainder, the other 9, are on the cul-de-sac running east-west. So it's not like it's all a compartment dedicated for housing. It's got sort of two different faces and doing two different functions on the site. So the key considerations on this one are the principle of development, again, HA allocation, housing allocation, the right number in the right place. So I said at the beginning, do what it should and bringing with it the school. It's massive, bringing with it the school, because the school is the key to everything in Barrow, not just this site, as we just experienced on the other. Site access, as just shown, and the same one again on the A60. Housing mix, outside of affordable, housing mix on this site is spot on. Rarely get to say that. We usually sort of say, oh, it's good enough, or it could do better, but this one is spot on within the ranges that we aim for. So feather in the cap for that. And the developer contributions, again, a similar array, including the village hall, as the last one, but obviously calibrated to the size of this scheme, which is different to that scheme. And the school's money is different because they're providing the site, so they get like credit discount for that. So the actual monetary sum is less, but the hectareage of the school site is given over for the vast sum of £1, I think, in the 106. So we were quite easily able to conclude favourably on this recommendation, and on this application and give a favourable application recommendation. There is stuff on extras though, so at the time of writing this application didn't have the affordable housing officer's comments, so we were awaiting its arrival. It's now arrived and gives it a clean bill of health. It's at that point about clustering that we've just taken you through. And we also said subject to highways conditions when they arrive, and they have now arrived. So I will very briefly tell you what they're asking. Nothing exciting, I might add. So you've heard it all before on many applications. So they ask for a construction management plan, that the roundabout access is built before people move in, that the pumping station access, just quickly show you that, which is at the top of that slide, is fully constructed before they start using it, that the A60 works are fully completed before people move in, that the pedestrian access onto Willow Road, which is best shown here, so coming out of the south side of the site to Willow Road, where we parked, basically, that is provided before people move in, that the various bits off-site, which you can just about pick up on this diagram around the existing Willow Road roundabout linking a footpath there, that they're all done before people move in. And that stopping up a road traffic order, rather not a stopping up order at all, a road traffic order is pursued because that's what's needed to move the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit further out of the village, because we're going into like virgin territory here, as you saw when we were there. The village is expanding to the north. They've also come back to us with a list of 106s. Again, absolutely nothing out of the ordinary, bar one, which I'll comment on in a moment. So they've usually travel plans, telling people what their travel options are and trying to persuade us to get out of our cars. Bus passes, if people wish to take them up. A travel plan monitoring fee, which was the same as the late edition for the previous application. That's just about checking that the travel plan that's submitted actually works. The speed limit, funding that change of the speed limit sign, and funding for, excuse me, one of these footpath links to Willow Road, because it's on land that Bloors don't control, so they're relying on someone else to do it. So that's how they'll facilitate it. The one that's odd is that they're asked for SIL payments for this. I've seen it on a few cases now, actually, which is an odd thing for them to ask, and fundamentally the answer has to be no. And not because we're uncooperative, because SIL's time hasn't arrived yet. We don't have a choice about when, if and when to apply it. It becomes a routine imposition from the day that it's inaugurated. But its inauguration is going to be September at best. So it's just not a thing just now. So we haven't got anything to apply. We couldn't apply it if we wanted. If we're having this debate in October, I'll be saying much the same. SIL applies, we don't have a choice about it. But where we are now is there is no SIL, so they can't have it just now. It's for the future. So we'll have to decline their kind request on that particular score, I'm afraid. So I think that probably fills up the gaps that came through extras and makes life a little bit easier going forward, because we're further forward than we were a week ago, and we can, if you're in agreement with the recommendation, move ahead and embark on the 106.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Worley. So that brings us to our speakers. We have three on this item. The first of whom is Mr. Mark Rose, who is the agent for this application. Are you familiar with the equipment, Mr. Rose? Yeah, whenever you're ready, then you have 3 minutes. Mr. Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. The application site is allocated for residential development in your recently adopted local plan and forms a key component of its spatial strategy. Not only will it deliver up to 220 much needed new homes, it will provide the land and a significant amount of funding for the delivery of a new primary school, that will enable the other allocation sites in the village to come forward. The proposed scheme already benefits from a resolution from yourselves to approve an outline planning application that has established the principle of development in accordance with the local plan, and also the details of the proposed access via a new roundabout on Coates Road, as you've heard, and the walking and cycling links into the village, and also a potential link into the potential village hall site. The master plan also established key design principles in terms of the location of the school site, the internal building and road arrangements, and the scale and nature of the open space provision. The detailed scheme proposals for you now accord with that master plan, and Bloor Homes have worked closely with your officers to ensure that they appropriately reflect the nature of the site and its surroundings, and will result in a high-quality residential neighbourhood with a distinctive sense of place. The new houses will be provided in a mix of sizes, types and tenures that have been agreed with your officers. That includes provision of 30% as affordable homes and also bungalows that would be suitable for older people. That provision will contribute significantly towards meeting the borough's market and affordable housing needs. The new houses and primary school will benefit from an attractive setting created by a network of green corridors that will provide usable open space for residents and active travel connections. The green space will include an equipped play area aimed at younger children and a central focal recreation space where older children and adults can meet and socialise. Extensive new planting will be provided to integrate the scheme into its surroundings, and together with the SUS provision, that will provide a significant habitat and biodiversity enhancements. The existing farmhouse and barns will need to be relocated elsewhere in the site to facilitate the site access, but have been carefully positioned and sensibly designed to reflect the historic arrangement of farm complexes in the area, and with significant landscaping to ensure that they sit comfortably within the surrounding landscape. As well as the site for the new primary school, the development will also deliver significant financial contributions towards community infrastructure, including the parish council's new village hall, schools, sports provision and allotments, health facilities and transport facilities. In conclusion, the planning application proposals would clearly accord with the adopted local plan and constitute sustainable development that would result in a number of significant benefits, not least by providing much needed market affordable housing, support for local community facilities and a substantial area of accessible and attractive public open space, including new play and recreation facilities. In that light, we support the conclusions drawn in your officer's committee report and the recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rose. That brings us to our next speaker, which is Mr. Rod Bilson, again on behalf of Barrow upon Sword Parish Council. The same as before, Mr. Bilson. When you're ready, just use the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Ms. Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Good evening again. The Parish Council is not trying to resist development, but wants to ensure that the development in our village is well designed, properly balanced and supported by infrastructure. This scheme does not achieve this. The concerns raised by the Council's own urban design officer underline that this proposal fails to respond to the surroundings. The layout, the density and the overall form created a development that can be seen anywhere in the country. This is not a high quality, local responsive design required by policy. We must learn from experience. Other developments in the village have shown the consequences of poor design. We have places that lack character, a sense of place and no long-term quality. This scheme risks representing the same mistakes. While 30% affordable housing is noted, there is a clear lack of single-storey homes within the market housing. The limited supply of accessible units within the affordable element is insufficient. There is a well-understood need in the parish for bungalows and homes suitable for older residents and downsizers. The development does not address that need and fails to comply with policy 117 of the Barrow Parish Plan. The development will bring new families into the parish. There's no guarantee of local school places in the short term. The reality is that children as young as 4, 5, 6 and 7 may have to travel out of the village to access a school place until the provision is delivered. No parent is going to put such young children on a bus to travel alone, so the family will need to use the car. It's not morally acceptable for such young children to have to travel a distance to receive an education. This is unsustainable and it does not support a strong local community. The officer's report suggests that concerns about the school layout are premature. Parish Council strongly disagrees and the school site is included on the plans, and once this is development is built, the layout will be fixed and the opportunity for further future school expansion, which was initially offered by the developer, will be lost. This is precisely the stage at which these issues must be considered. Even with some contributions secured, the development places add pressure on local infrastructure without fully resolving its impact. The result of is a scheme that priorities numbers over quality and delivery over long-term sustainability. Members, we ask you for better design, better housing mix, better alignment with the needs of the village. The scheme does not meet these standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bilson. And our next final speaker is Ward Councillor, Councillor Fryer. Whenever you're ready, Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the committee. I initially called this application in back in 2022, which is a slightly different world than where we are now. A lot of the points I had concerns about have been covered. I see no problem with this. I think we are ending up, hopefully, within a few years of a new school, which is desperately needed because the current school has very few, well designed. I think also, although we're lacking facilities at the moment in the village, hopefully, with the increase in population, these will appear, such as a post office and/or bank, an improvement to the health centre, and that the flooding will be mitigated. And also the bus services. I think the report in the application papers covers most of the thing. It does mean this is all part of a bigger picture, including a numerous application, one which we've already discussed tonight, just across the road, that we will get some of the facilities that the village needs, such as a new school, a new modern school, a school that will have the latest facility. And on a day like this, hopefully we'll have air conditioning and there will be better facilities. There will be a community centre. There will be leisure facilities. Yes, it is outside the centre of the village. I live in the centre of the village, and unless you knock down the whole of the village, you're not going to get it. It is outside. And so therefore, the officers have gone into a lot of detail. The applicant has gone into a lot of detail. So I think between us all, they are very aware of the needs of the village, and I am delighted to see that there is going to be a new junction on the A60, which will make huge alleviation, and therefore I personally have no problem with this application. I should point out I have been the ward councillor since 2003, so I've seen a lot of development in my village and I still live there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fryer. Before we move to the committee discussion, Mr. Worley, is there anything you'd like to reply to or clarify from the speakers?
Yes, please, Chair, if you wouldn't mind. Again, I'll try and follow the order that they were presented. So just the cross-reference made to our own urban design officer's comments. I think it's important to understand the context of what's reported here. So they're on your page 239. What they say is a critique of the application as it stood. This submission that we're looking at is a response to that critique and aimed to right its wrongs. And the urban design officer hasn't said anything adverse about this at all so far. So it's all about like moment in time, basically. More generally on design, the comments made by the parish council, they were in writing as well as this evening, gave me cause to get more familiar with the village design statement in Barrow, which is part of their neighbourhood plan. So if I can refer you to page 258, I plucked out from the design statement its relevant sections for new development. I'm saying that because there's a lot in it about what goes on in the conservation area and shop fronts and signs. So the bits that are new to development. And I was interested in the correct, I think, accusation laid about this development, that it doesn't resemble all things Barrow. There's no sandstone in it, it's not narrow streets, so on and so on. When you read the village design statement, the parish council themselves advocate that development should be reflective of its surroundings, not the village centre, its surroundings. This site's surroundings is the quite large housing development around Willow Road, which is suburban and cul-de-sacs like that. So I thought, frankly, either they're going against their own guidance, or we would need to talk about the differences between this and what's across the road. So not, you know, it's quite new across the road. It's 20, I guess, years old, so has a similar kind of character, the way the industry's gone. So I thought they were doing what they were told to be doing, actually. The parallel allegation made with that is that there's no sense of place here, although Parish Council linked that to their comments about all things Barrow. I think there will be a sense of place on this site. I think despite having similarities, as I've just said with the Ross Road, it will feel when you enter this place, when it's built, like you're entering quite a different place to the ones you've just left, because it does have differences. The house type's different, similar form but different, and probably most of all, again, value of site visits. It's built on quite a steep slope, so that will give it like a unique feel that you don't have, even on Willow Road opposite. That's flat in comparison. So, and a lot of the design has been influenced by that slope. Quite difficult design challenges, actually. So I think they will have a sense of place. I think it have quite a clear identity of its own, and you'll know that you're in like the New Bloors development off Willow Road. You couldn't be mixed up with even the old development on the other side of Willow Road. It's distinctive in that sense. Right, on the school, what you're looking at now is the site layout for this site, and what you can see about the school is what we have, nothing more, nothing less. So I don't know where this debate about its rights and wrongs comes from, because to me it's just blank sheet of paper at this stage. It's outlined in that respect, and that's, as we discussed on the previous application, that's the stuff of reserved matters. Then we can all pile in its rights and wrongs. Children being ferried out of villages to be educated in others, I think is a fact of modern life. A lot of people choose to do that with their kids, don't they? I know where I live, some kids go to the next village or the next one after that because school's got a better reputation, things like that. So I don't think that that's really against sort of the societal trend or unacceptable. And it's only temporary here because the school will be built eventually when the funds are all combined, and then everyone can stay closer to home if they want to, may not want to. And just this question of housing for older people, it's true there aren't many bungalows in the market sector on this site, more than we usually see, but still not a gigantic amount. But I don't think we need to fall into the stereotype of thinking, oh, people need bungalows and nothing else will do. I don't think we'd have a McCarthy and Stone if that was the case, for example. So what's baked into this application and reinforced by condition is that whole chunk of the market houses have to be to that accessible housing standard, which is set out in Building Regulation M or something like that. And there's a condition to that effect on this. And what accessible housing means under that specification is accessible to older people, basically, and disabled people. So there is housing that's suitable for older people. It's just not all bungalows. And that's in great quantities. There'll be 25 of those at least. I think Bloors actually choose to build things that way, whether they're asked to or not, actually. So the numbers will just get higher and higher. So we thought that angle was, that's in the report somewhere as well. And we thought that angle was covered as well in this slightly different way. So I don't think we need to fall out on that particular point.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Worley. So that brings us to the committee discussion. Are there any councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Good. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking that the planting scheme is going to be native, is that correct?
Mr. Worley?
Yeah, the quickest check you can do here is refer to the landscape officer's comments, which appear early in the report. So I lost my place, so I might as well tell you exactly where. And she makes that point and says that they're appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Good then.
Can I ask how many of the 16 bungalows are actually affordable housing? And also, is it in our power to ask to change the cluster, the affordable housing cluster at all?
Apologies, could you say the second half of your question again, please? I didn't quite catch it. Sorry.
The first half of the question was how many of the 16 bungalows are actually affordable housing? And the second half of the question was, is it in our power to ask to change the locations of the affordable housing cluster so it's not a cluster anymore?
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Good. Mr. Worley?
Well, we do have this detail in the plans, but not in one of these tables. So as a rule of thumb, I think you can interpret that the, oh, right, I'm referring now, sorry, to page 262 and the table at the bottom there. And as a rule of thumb, you can assume the one-bedroom houses are mostly, not all, mostly, because there's some maisonettes, bungalows. So there's your answer, just under 16.
So are the bungalows just one bedroomed then? There's no family bungalows or anything that's suitable for disabled children, for example?
Speaking entirely from memory now, but I believe that to be the case, yes.
And the cluster?
We can't move things about. We can't sort of redraw drawings. If it was, Mr. Gill's advice earlier, isn't it? If it was deemed absolutely necessary, as in without this we're going to be refusing, you can use a condition to achieve things like that. And as a worst case scenario, for example, if this issue had attracted your attention, we could invite Bloors to calibrate their layout and maybe relocate. You know, they could probably find the same house types elsewhere on the site to change to affordable. It's shark infested waters though, because one of the reasons that houses are grouped together like this is the debate we just had on the last case again, actually, is that affordable housing providers want them to be together for maintenance reasons, really. And the minute you start spreading them all over the place, they lose interest. So careful what you wish for, because we could get to a position where we're putting people off taking them and it could all go backfire in our faces terribly.
Councillor Good?
I was just checking because on the extras report it mentions that we can request to reduce this, but there's no way it can be accommodated. So can we request? Is that in the application for us to request that, if possible?
Am I correct? You're referring to the affordable housing officer's comments that we report? Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. That's she's asking the same question you asked. Basically, it says, can we ask to make these changes? As I say, we can if you think, and we can probably condition if you think it's critical. That's a big if. It's this question of need, necessity that Dave spoke about earlier.
Okay. Mr. Upton.
Yes. Yeah, take on board the comments that Mr. Worley's made, but I think ultimately the affordable housing officer is content with the clustering arrangement as shown, and I think it goes back to the point made earlier about whether anything is necessary, and as Jim was pointing out, yeah, I don't think it's reasonable or necessary in this particular case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Upton. Just on that, on the point that Councillor Good made of bungalows and the size of bungalows, I've just jumped into this using a Control F completely out of context, so forgive me if this is a silly thing to say. But in the substantive report, in the affordable housing officer's comments, I'm not entirely clear what it means. They give a breakdown, some tables of what they're saying. The HENA is saying that the affordable housing mix should be, which is fairly standard and very useful. And following that, right at the top of page 209, all affordable housing to NDSS, don't know what that means, to accommodate the following number of people, and then it gives a list. 2-bed, it says 3-person bungalow. Does that mean we've got some of these on here or not?
That's a moment in time stuff again. Yeah, NDSS is space standards.
Right.
SS stands for space standards.
Yeah.
And it's just making room, the house overall, and the rooms within the houses are big enough for people to practically live in national standards these days. That was then, but then what happened is really quite late in the day, the developer's final proposed mix came, and the affordable housing officer's response to that is what's in extras, and it's accepting of the mix, just raising this point about clustering, but everything else okay.
Okay, fine. Who else wants to come in? Councillor Smidovic.
An observation. You mentioned that the broad design is a good design, and we heard an opposing view from the speaker. So if I was to go, say, into Wigston for a broad design, would it look identical to that? Is it one that's traditionally almost moved around, shuffled a little bit? Because what worries me is the tandem parking. And then I notice on page 259, it says pedestrian access through the site is to a high standard, making use of the open spaces and offering an alternative to pavements alongside roads. So I'm thinking to myself, is it going to be cars parked on those open spaces? Because we know what happens in some of the new builds now.
So I think with the up-to-date, the most up-to-date layout, which is this one, that's a reference to these parking bays. Just think it's big enough for you to see, that flank that central lozenge of open space. So there's, once built and lived in, there will be cars parked in a row either side of that part of that open space, because the parking is in front of the houses and the houses face the open space. I think that's a comment about that, saying, is that wise? Not the same thing as saying, will cars park on the open space? I don't think there's enough of them for the houses, and the open space will be delineated in some way, at the very least by curbs. Usually on modern estates, you get at least this like knee rail fencing that you can't take a car through. It might be hedges. So I don't think there'll be like an invasion of the open space, and it'll still be open space and usable as open space. The point's more one about appearance.
I'm just thinking about refuse storage and everything else.
Oh yeah, the practicality of that has been proven on this. When applicants put forward schemes like this, amongst their vast bundle of plans is something called a tracking plan, which shows how big vehicles can cope. And they base it on the bin lorry actually. So they prove that the corners aren't too tight and the roads are wide enough, things like that. So the bin lorry can do its business.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Worley. Do we have any other councillors wishing to come in on this one? No? Councillor Palmer, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as planning applications go, I think this is a pretty good one with the addition of the school and the social space for older children and adults. And I would like to propose that we accept officers' recommendations and approve the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Palmer. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Northridge?
Yes, thank you. I'm quite happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
All right. Extras, yeah. And are we both happy for that to include the amendments made in the extras report as well to the recommendations? And the additional stuff Mr. Worley has reported tonight as well. Yeah, happy with that? Okay. Does anybody have anything more to add before we move to the vote? No? Okay, all those in favour? That's unanimous, and that item is passed. Thank you very much, everyone. So that brings us on to our last item, item 6, list of applications determined under delegated powers. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Councillor Campbell.
A lot of residents in Thorpe Acre and Dishley are very concerned about the number of children's homes that are now appearing. It seems that they asked to come to a committee, but officers just say, no, we're just going to pass it anyway, sort of thing. Is there any way that residents, because it looks like this is going to be a thing in the future. I mean, these three here in Thorpe Acre and one on Browning Road, Darwin, Crescent and Stewart Drive are within sort of 8-minute walking distance of each other, you know. So if any others pop up, could we have it come to a plans committee sort of thing? That's one. I mean, and also I'd like to ask, you're taking houses out of family use, turning them into a children's home. Do they still pay council tax on these homes? I wanted to know, is that?
So I would guess, like, obviously, if they're in your ward, it is in your gift to call them in. But officers, do you have anything to comment on that in terms of the C2 children's homes?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, as you alluded to, yeah, there are call-in provisions. So if people have got unsatisfied concerns, there is a call-in provision. But as always, I would always advise members with those concerns in the first instance to discuss things with the case officer, just to understand the proposal fully before exercising that right. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to raise an issue to do with discharge of conditions, but I've spoken to the officers and they're going to raise it in the plans training, which is next week, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Does anybody have anything else to add before we move on? No? Okay. Well, that brings us to the close of the meeting. The next meeting of the Plans Committee will be on Thursday, the 23rd of July. And as Councillor O'Neill said, we do have, I think, an in-person training session next Thursday as well in Committee Room 2. So see you all there. Thank you very much tonight, everyone. I know it's been a hot one, so well done for persevering. Good evening.